Good morning. My name is Sophie Twerkowski. My pronouns are she, hers. I am today's worship associate. Welcome to Unitarian Society of New Haven on this first stormy fall weekend, beginning of autumn. We are glad that you are here in person or virtual. We come into this moment putting away our worries for an hour to be renewed, supported, and challenged. We come into this place, a sanctuary that is strengthened by our diversity, compassion, and commitment to social justice. We bring all that we are here to this moment, this place, this beloved community, knowing that our whole selves are welcome here. We acknowledge that our sanctuary sits on the land which is traditionally that of the Quinnipiac and other Native people. As a congregation, we seek to heal the wounds of the past and present and ongoing work of reconciliation. Jesse and I will have a few announcements this morning, but before we start, please make sure that your devices are in worship mode. If you are visiting for the first time or are relatively new to USNH, you are invited to meet with our connections team in the right rear of the social hall after the service. Today is the last day to sign up to participate in the USNH Community Building Potluck Program. The sign-up sheets are also in the social hall. You were invited to attend the regional meeting of Connect, Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut, on Monday, October 2nd at 7 o'clock at Temple Emmanuel in Orange. In October, the regional gatherings will be held at Connect member synagogues, and a portion of each evening will occur in the Sukkah, a shelter erected for the Jewish festival of Sukkot. Don't miss this opportunity to learn about an important holiday in the Jewish calendar as we focus on building and rebuilding relationships with other faith communities in our region. A number of us have found this multi-faith coalition to be very inspiring. And it's worth mentioning that Caitlin O'Brien, who is part of our USNH community, has joined the Connect staff. Jesse?
A couple of very quick religious education announcements. Speaking of final days to sign up for things, today is the last day that you can sign up for fall small group ministries. The signups will be in the social hall after today's service. Online signups are likewise going to close today as well. Your group facilitator for your small group ministry will be in touch soon with information about group meetings and other details. It is also the final day to sign up for adult religious education class, Neighboring Faiths. And as if that wasn't enough, after today's service, there's going to be a worship discussion circle in room 209 upstairs, hosted by members of the adult religious education team. Discussion will begin centered around worship themes from this past month, from September, but may flow above and beyond. And finally, our youth group camped out in the backyard in the Memorial Garden on Friday night, and they had a wonderful time. The river cleanup that they were going to do on Saturday got canceled, and it is postponed until, I shouldn't have said canceled, postponed until next Saturday. So there is still a chance. Any children and youth who would like to go help clean up a section of river at Veterans Memorial Park in Middletown, please write to kst@usnh.org or talk with me anytime between now and next Saturday, and we can get you into that group. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Sophie. With Yom Kippur starting at sundown, and this being the first day of fall, we open our service of worship with words from Tagore. Today, the peace of autumn pervades the world. In the stillness, I hear in every blade of grass, in every speck of dust, in every part of my own body, in the visible and invisible worlds, in the planets, the sun, and the stars, the joyous dance of atoms through endless time. And I invite Sophie to come forth and light our chalice with these words from Starhawk. We are the radiant light and the sacred dark, the balance. You are the embrace that heartens and the freedom beyond fear. Within you, we are born, we grow, live, and die. You bring us round the circle to rebirth. Within us, you dance forever. This is a congregation that takes seriously its sense of covenant. And covenant is an old-fashioned word, but let me just cut to the chase. Covenant means the promise that we make to each other. Let's say together the words in your order of service. The covenant that we give to each other each and every week. Beginning with the words, to this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, seek humor and joy. I invite you to rise as you are willing and able to sing 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song, an early Quaker, beautiful spiritual. 108.
this time I would like to invite any children and any adults who feel the child inside them active today to come forward and have a seat down in the front. You don't have to, but it's just an invitation. You might get to enjoy a better view of today's story. So come on down and have a seat right up here. Welcome. Good morning. Here's how this morning's story begins. An unspecified amount of time ago, in an undisclosed location, there was a town called Weemuchamalind. Now, the people of Weemuchamalind went about their business every day, with the farmers busily farming, the smiths busily smithing, the builders busily building, the lawyers busily lawyering, and the musicians mostly working second day jobs. Now, Weemuchamalind was much like any other town, but it had one feature that made it quite different. In the center of the town, where some other towns might have, a green or a municipal building or some such thing, Weemuchamalind had a line. Yes, that's right. It had a line, a deep, straight impression drawn right into the concrete. The line was there to show everyone where it was. Now, what I mean by that is that everyone in Weemuchamalind knew where the line was and knew not to cross it. If you crossed the line, you were considered out of line. And you would have to be brought back into line through a certain covenantal process that involved everyone in Weemuchamalind circling around the line crosser and gently guiding them back across. It was a bit like collectively guiding a lost boat back safely into the harbor. This was all well and good until the day a new mayor was elected, and all gathered around to hear this new mayor's inaugural speech. The people came from wide and far, some out of curiosity, some out of a profound sense of skepticism, some because they were, just between gigs right now. But when they gathered in the center of town, the people, and let's see if you all can help me out with this one, the people let out a collective gasp. Oh, I love this room. There in the center of town, the new mayor had set up a lectern to deliver their inaugural speech, but they had set it up on the other side of the line. "Oh, Mayor," cried the people, "you've crossed the line on your very first day in office. Let's just gently and lovingly bring you back across." The people reached out, ready to help the poor mayor, but they froze when the next words came out of the mayor's mouth. "I'm where I need to be. The line is not." So, in my first official act as mayor of Weemuchamalind, I'm moving the line over here. And with that, several members of the public works staff came forward and covered the old line and drew a new one. It seemed that now the mayor was on the right side of the line. "Oh, ho, ho, ho," said one of the farmers. "I always knew the line was in the wrong place. The mayor's right. In fact, I'm going to declare that the line should be moved to just the other side of that thing I posted on social media yesterday." "Well, I'm going to move the line just beyond that thing I said to my distant relative last Thanksgiving," said another Weemuchamalindian. "Oh yeah, well, I've always thought that the line was too far over there in the first place, so I'm going to move it backwards to the doorway of the local schoolhouse," said a concerned parent. Well, the mayor began to shout, and the farmers began to disagree with each other, rather strongly for farmers. The teachers began to create rubrics, and one thing was for sure, nobody knew where the line was anymore. This went on for some time all afternoon. The line got moved over here, and then it got moved over here, and then it got moved so many times that everyone started to have very clear opinions about where it was and where it should be. Some say that the line might even be lost forever. But those who take a moment and take time out to sit with their thoughts before speaking, those who believe in the power of community to tow lost boats into harbor, might just notice that the public workers who covered up the original We Much Maligned line did so with sand. And now, every time it rains, every time the wind blows, every time a bell rings at the start of a UU service, you just might notice all those other lines washing away, while the line that was co-created through years of practice, through compromise, through love, just starts peeking through again. So let's go figure out where that line is, shall we? I invite all children that are present in the sanctuary now to walk with me up to their first day of classes, and shall we sing them out with the words, "Go now in peace." They're in your order of service. Please sing. Go now in peace, go now in peace, may the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Peace, go now in peace, may the Lord go around everywhere, everywhere you may go. We take time in our service each week to name the joys and sorrows we like to be held by this beloved community. We are in a caring congregation, and pastoral support is offered through our minister and pastoral care associates. If you or someone you know could use support, please reach out to the pastoral care team or the USNH office. The flowers in our sanctuary today are provided in memory of Skip Weldon, Nancy Brown's husband. Skip's memorial service was held yesterday in our sanctuary. Sorry. In the coming days and months, please continue to support all members of our beloved community who are experiencing a loss, health concerns, or other life challenges.
Yesterday, in the memorial service for Skip Weldon, we recited the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which asks that we may be an instrument of peace. And also, we just sung the children out with the words, "Go now in peace." I'd like to use peace as our entry point today for our time of meditation and silence. Peace may seem very elusive when our individual lives are so hectic and our world is in turmoil. But in my experience, at least, it is still possible to find a sense of peace within, despite what is happening around me. And when I am connected to that sense of peace and I operate from there, I become a much more effective agent of change in my own life and that of my world. So I invite you to close your eyes if that feels safe and comfortable. And if not, you may keep a soft focus in the middle distance. Feel your body on the pew. Notice your breath. Is it shallow and constricted? Can you allow your breath to become more restful even and deep. As you breathe, you may wish to repeat silently the word peace as a kind of mantra. Peace on your inhale. Peace on your exhale. Peace in. Peace out. As you breathe peace in and out, where do you find peace in your body? Is it rooted in your heart, your solar plexus, your gut? Where? See if you can find a center of peace somewhere in your own body and being, a place that you can return to as needed. And if you wish, I invite you to breathe in and out of the center of peace, connecting with it deeply as we spend the next few moments in a time of silence. I invite you to allow this short time of meditation to be a reminder that you have the capacity and ability to hold a state of peace in your body and being, even when chaos and turmoil swirl around you, and even when you find wolves in wolves' clothing operating around you. Now, a few moments of silence.
Thank you, Sunny. Every week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of this congregation. Our community continues, and the need for ongoing support continues as well. And as the music plays, I urge you to consider perhaps navigating to our website and making a donation, or during the week, to send on something to the Unitarian Society of New Haven's, 700 Hartford Turnpike, by the mail, or using the QR code in your order of service. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many paths towards generosity. And as you leave here today, you can also make a donation at the end of the service on your way out. However you choose to give, your offering is received with gratitude.
please join me in the responsive reading in your gray hymnal, number 579, The Limits of Tyrants by Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them.
I begin today's sermon with an apology to all wolves everywhere. I'm sure in the wild they're all very nice. They certainly are the worst publicity agents in all the animal kingdom. From early times, we have feared wolves, and we have made up stories about them. Aesop's fables. The wolf in sheep's clothing. Winston Churchill was once asked to describe his political opponent, Clement Attlee, and he considered a moment and he said, "I think he's a sheep in sheep's clothing." The ancient Romans described politics in a very simple, cogent way. That man is wolf to man. You may have noticed just this week, a story came out from Joint Chief of Staff Mark Milley, who was being interviewed as he concludes his time. And he described going all the way back to his swearing-in ceremony. He asked a veteran he knew, U.S. Captain Luis Avila, to sing God Bless America. Captain Avila had suffered the loss of a leg, brain damage, 2 heart attacks, and 2 strokes, and yet he was able to sing. And afterwards, in the hearing of numerous witnesses, the former presidents said, "Why do you bring people like that here? No one wants to see that, the wounded." And he instructed that Captain Avila was not to be in any further ceremony. We live in times where cruelty is no longer shameful. It's no longer needing to be hidden or finessed. It can just, live out there in the open. It can even be celebrated with delight and no regret. And that is kind of a rampant social virus. Now, cruelty has always, as I've alluded to, been present in human history. We can't escape it. It's there. It's in the human heart. And as much as we'd like to avert our eyes, it's hard to. I'm reading Ned Blacklock's book about the history of the native peoples, which is now up for the National Book Award, and I'm not jealous of it. And you read that book, and you see the extent of cruelty that can lie in ways that we just don't want to look at or consider. My daughter Elizabeth took a course with her professor of art at Mount Holyoke, and this professor specialized, and it's so tough, I don't even know how we could do it, with the postcards from 1920s and 30s America of the lynching of our fellow citizens and the smiling faces, the crowds looking up and looking at the camera. Can't escape it. Martin Luther King, near the end of his life, was interviewing with the Hollywood director Abby Mann. And they were talking about how the course of the movie might go. And Abby Mann said, so where do we end? How do we end this? And King looked at Mann and said, "It ends with me being killed." And he was not wrong. But cruelty has not always been triumphant. We know that. The human story contains much that reinforces our Unitarian Universalist belief that love is stronger than hate, and that this faith is not in vain. or at the very least, we can convince our fellow citizens that cruelty is worth covering up, should be indulged with covertly and with a sense of a deep, pervasive shame. So what do we do when we live through a time where there is not only cruelty, as there's always been, but an evident delight in it? Cruelty in the human heart is not just an individual problem. It is societal. And it comes out when you want to demonize or dehumanize a whole segment of people. That's how you make cruelty palatable. And sometimes to make it delectable. It's all about the power to dominate. And with the kinks in our political system, and I'm talking about you, Electoral College, you don't need a majority, just a fervent, committed majority. And I was alerted to all this when I read an essay some years ago by the writer Adam Server. He wrote an essay called "Cruelty is the Point," because so many analysts and political scientists and people like me standing in pulpits were basically able to look at the increasing ugliness in American political life and in our cultural life and say, well, it's just a bug in the system. But Adam Server said, that's not it at all. The cruelty is the point because it serves to unite. It's not a bug in the system. It's a galvanizing force. Now we know that this cruelty is nothing new. But we used to feel the need to hide it away, to obfuscate it, to refine it, to use sophisticated nomenclature. But now, we don't need that. You have public rallies of ritual humiliation, of what Server calls people having a lot of fun at Trump rallies. He writes, yes, they feel good. They feel proud. It makes them feel happy. And it makes them feel closer to one another. Shared laughter at others is quite an adhesive. When you can take people's hidden depths and release them, bring those feelings to the surface, give them legitimacy, let them run riot. It's the ultimate political aphrodisiac. Now, lots of people are trying to understand what's going on. They're trying to interpret it. They're trying to make sense of it. David Brooks wrote an essay in the New Atlantic, which I forward on to you. Basically, he says in a simple way that we have indeed gotten crueler and meaner because since World War II, the old American virtues of moral formation have been systematically stripped away. He says we don't really know how to be kind to each other anymore because we no longer have the moral training or the positive reinforcement when we are not cruel. But like so many people, Brooks indulges in a nostalgic sense of the past, of a world of cultural relativism, a nostalgic invocation where both sides are imperfect, both sides of our political and cultural divide are equally culpable. And it's not true. We liberals have our blind sides. We have our issues. But we do not take delight in demeaning others or taking away their vote and their voice. We don't do that. And we don't delight in it either. Inquiring journalists and political scientists, and yes, ministers and political professors, have spent years trying to figure this out. And as far as I can make it out, it's an intent to take America back to 1958, before the Voting Rights Act, before the Civil Rights era got going. And maybe lately I've had an uneasy suspicion that maybe it's 1858 that they're going for, with their pretty radical agenda. There are many explanations out there, some centering on the sense that some of these folks feel oppressed by coastal elites, that they suffer economic deprivations that we don't understand. I grew up in a little town of 4,000 people, Clinton, Tennessee. It's true. I'm talking to folks in New Haven, Hamden. But to insist that somehow people like us don't understand what it means to be a simple American living and attempting to live a life of decency, that somehow we're an oppressive elite, is nonsense. And it's illegitimate. And it's an excuse to try to take away our voice. And it ignores a little commented fact. In 2020, the average Republican voter was more affluent than the average Democratic voter. Rarely ever commented on. Fox News really kind of let the cat out of the bag when they started last year talking about legacy voters. What are legacy voters? Who are these special people? My guess, they are the voters who made America great in olden days. And it's the oldest story in American history. It is our original sin, and it's about race. When you start talking about legacy voters, you're talking about race. Thomas Jefferson was quoting the Emperor Tiberius, who talked about how dangerous it was to hold a wolf by the ears. And he wrote about his life in slavery and in the young nation. And he wrote to a friend, John Holmes, in 1820, and as it is, we have the wolf by the ears, and we can neither hold him nor safely let him go. And he was bluntly honest with himself, one of the rare times he did on this subject. He said, justice is on one side and self-preservation on the other. The preservation of his life. What are we up against? I think we're up against a pretty strong demographic reality that whites will be a minority within 30 years. It is the nightmare of white supremacy. And like unto it, another demographic change. That white Christian nationalism is being driven by this similar reality. 5 years ago, for the very first time, evangelical churches began to fall in membership. Young evangelicals, even more importantly, are not showing enthusiasm for their parents' deal with the devil to preserve and protect them. They are far less political and I believe more faithful than their parents. And you put these two together, then you get the makings for them of a segment of our population. And they vote for what they see as an existential battle. They see it as their survival. And in this battle, there is no room for compromise, and there's no time for shame. Let's take a step back. Let's get a longer perspective. There was a young man named James Luther Adams. He was trained to be a professor in religious ethics. He was a young Unitarian. And he went to Nazi Germany in the late 1930s. He brought back movies that are actually very important for historians. And he came back completely disheartened by everything that he was seeing about the rise of the Nazi movement, about the rise of fascism in Europe. And he said, I had to examine my own religious liberalism and ask, well, what is it asked me to do? I believe that Adams is one of the most important figures in our history because his answers were tough. And I think they go to the heart of what I'm trying to get at today for all of us. He said, I came home with the intention of making history in place of merely being pushed around by it. Of making history rather than being pushed around by it. And he said, if religious liberals are going to do this work, what we have to deal with is an inner sense that's closer to conversion than having opinions. He said this, and maybe you'll agree and maybe you won't, but I think that they're words worth hearing. He said the element of commitment, of change of heart, of decision, this has been neglected by religious liberalism, and that is the prime source of its enfeeblement. To restore to liberalism its own dynamic and prophetic genius, we must go deeper. Only by some conversion can we be possessed by a love that will not let us go. So to do this work, he said, we have to be changed ourselves. We can't just point fingers at other people. We have to look at ourselves and how we operate. Now, we can't let ourselves become wolves. We can't cast aside our liberal values. But we can't become someone else's dinner either. The writer William Ing said, it is useless for the sheep to pass resolutions in favor of vegetarianism while the wolf remains of a different opinion. So yes, we need to listen. We need to examine. We should try to understand other people's pain and difficulties. These are not things we can abandon. They fit our theology. But Unitarian Universalists are often uncomfortable with the little word, power. To root out cruelty will take more than sensitivity and listening. It's going to take out organizing, out spending, out voting, out energizing those who dream of a different and meaner and much smaller America. And we can do both. But we better figure out that this cruelty will not ease or go away on its own. It must be defeated. And it must be resisted. In doing this talk, I think of fellow pastors perhaps on the plains of Kansas, looking at their congregations every Sunday, and what must go through their head and hearts. So I bring to them and to us Matthew 7:15. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. I cannot think of a better word for the times we live in and what we face than that word ravening. I wish I could truly understand what's going through their hearts and minds when they have lost their own biblical moorings. Jesus talked twice as much about taking care of the poor as he ever did about prayer. And he certainly did not go on about using trans people as a political cudgel and guns, or of the insane cruelty of our repressive reproductive rights and women's lives every day being at stake. No, we can't make ourselves into fellow wolves. That's not the solution. It cannot be. To lose our souls fighting to help others reclaim theirs. And as Adams reminds us, we cannot, in that sense, in the metaphor, be the sheep either. And in talking about this sermon with Liz earlier in the week, she said, well, why not become the shepherd? The shepherd guides, protects, comforts, goes after the lost ones. It's a good image to try to find ourselves in this time as shepherds. But one way or another, don't think that somehow we're in an advantageous situation in a time of cruelty. Cruelty could easily triumph. It really could. And the triumph of compassion, of hope. Yes, it is something to dream of. It is something to hope for. But it's only going to happen when delight in repressing and shaming others becomes something once again to be ashamed of. And that takes power, power in the soul. There'll be no nirvana, there'll be no perfect world, but there can be a return to a certain civic order that isn't frightening to contemplate. There could be something to work extraordinarily hard for, to out-hustle in a cruel world. That somehow in our shared common life, that this vision be more than a prophecy, the vision from Isaiah where I end today, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry? And that you bring to your house the poor who are cast out? When you see the naked, that you cover them, and not hide yourself from your own flesh. And then your light will break forth like the morning, and your healing shall spring forth speedily. Let us work so hard for such a healing of this nation we love. Amen. Thank you. Let us rise as you're willing and able for hymn 21, For the Beauty of the Earth, number 21.
Slides, source of
This our hymn of grateful praise. Joy of ear and eye, ardent heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, paintings and sight, source of all to thee we raise, this our hymn of grateful praise. The wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all to thee we raise, this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all to thee we raise, this our hymn of grateful praise. As Sophie extinguishes the chalice, let us say together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now may peace, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds to the knowledge of love, and may this peace be yours in the week to come. Amen, and go in peace. You take it from here?
Sure. I would love today to ask all of you for our postlude to turn to 216, Hashivenu, which we'll sing as a round led by some of our choir members. We'll sing it all in unison together first, and then we'll go 1, 2, and 3 for the round and sing it once through. So if you'd come up, who's going to lead? Hashivenu, Hashivenu, starting over here. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha. And now here. Hashivenu.